Every one of us is carrying two versions of ourselves. One is strong, steady in the storm, clear in the chaos, unshaken by the noise of the world. The other is weak, easily swayed, ruled by fear, living only to avoid discomfort. The weak version loves comfort more than growth. It whispers, "Not today. You're tired. You've done enough." It hides from challenges. It makes excuses. It blames others. It survives, but it never truly lives. The first step toward transformation is awareness. Most people go through their entire lives without realizing that they are being quietly controlled by a weaker version of themselves. This version is subtle, often invisible at first glance, but it is there shaping decisions, influencing habits, and quietly limiting what you believe you can do. To identify it, you must slow down and pay attention to your inner dialogue, because the weak version speaks in whispers, not in shouts. It is the voice that tells you to postpone what matters most, to take the easy path, to avoid situations that might expose your flaws. It thrives in comfort, and it convinces you that comfort is safety, when in truth, comfort is the cage it builds around you. Identifying the weak version requires ruthless honesty. You have to be willing to observe yourself without excuses, without the stories you've told others, and without the illusions you've been feeding yourself. Look at your daily choices, not the big, dramatic decisions, but the small, repeated ones. The moments when you choose to check your phone instead of finishing your work. The times you avoid speaking your mind because it feels easier to stay silent. The days when you skip the workout because you convince yourself you're too tired. These are not harmless moments. They are the fingerprints of the weak version. It is not enough to notice these patterns once. You must study them. Watch how they show up differently depending on your mood, your environment, and the people around you. The weak version is adaptable. It will disguise itself as logic, as self-care, even as kindness. It will say, "You've worked hard, you deserve to rest," when what it really means is, "Stay exactly where you are." It will tell you, "You're being considerate of others," when in truth, you are just avoiding conflict. You need to recognize these disguises for what they are, traps that keep you from becoming who you could be. Sometimes, identifying the weak version is painful because it will force you to admit that you have been living far below your potential. You will realize that many of your limitations were self-imposed. You will see how often you have let fear speak louder than courage. This is the moment where many people turn away, because awareness can be uncomfortable. But if you turn away, the weak version wins. The more you look at it directly, the less power it holds. You must also separate the weak version from your true self. This is important because many people believe they are the weak version. They think, "This is just who I am," when in reality, it is only a habit, a collection of behaviors and thoughts you've practiced for so long that they feel like identity. The truth is, you were not born with these patterns. They were built over time, through repeated choices, through the influence of your surroundings, and through the avoidance of pain. If they were built, they can be dismantled. This identification process is not about self-hatred, it is about self-awareness. You are not your weakness. You are the observer who can see it. Once you see it clearly, you can decide to stop feeding it. But that decision can only happen after you have faced it without denial. The weak version of yourself did not appear overnight, and it was not part of your original nature. It was shaped over time, carefully molded by fear, by the seductive pull of comfort, and by the subtle but powerful influence of the world around you. When you understand that this version is not an unchangeable truth, but rather a product of conditioning, you begin to see it differently. You see it as something built, and therefore something that can be dismantled. Fear was the first architect. It whispered that failure is dangerous, that rejection is unbearable, that discomfort is a threat to your well-being. This fear seeped into your decisions, guiding you away from challenges, making you believe that safety meant staying small. It convinced you to avoid risk, not realizing that avoiding risk is the very thing that suffocates growth. Every time you chose the path of least resistance, the weak version grew stronger. Every time you let fear dictate your choice, you handed it more control over your life. Then came comfort, which doesn't feel like an enemy at first. Comfort feels warm, reassuring, and harmless. It tells you that you deserve ease after a long day, that you should slow down and not push so hard. But what comfort hides is the fact that it is addictive. The more you indulge in it, the more it dulls your drive. Comfort conditions you to settle for less than you are capable of, to stop chasing what demands effort, to accept mediocrity disguised as peace. Over time, this comfort becomes a prison cell you decorate and learn to love, forgetting that there's an entire world beyond its walls. External influence plays its part as well. From the moment you were old enough to notice the opinions of others, you were shaped by them. Teachers, parents, friends, co-workers, all with their own fears, their own insecurities, projected them onto you. Some told you to be realistic, others warned you not to aim too high, and many implied that you should fit in rather than stand out. You learned to value approval over authenticity, and without even realizing it, you traded your boldness for acceptance. The weak version of you thrives in this environment because it is built on conformity and the avoidance of disapproval. When these three forces, fear, comfort, and external influence, work together long enough, they create a self that is hesitant, cautious, and unwilling to disrupt the status quo. You begin to think this is simply who you are. You convince yourself that you are not the type to take certain risks, or that you just prefer stability, when in reality, you have been conditioned to believe those things. This conditioning is so subtle and so persistent that most people never question it. But once you see it, you can no longer ignore it. You start to notice how often you make decisions that prioritize comfort over growth. How often you say no to opportunities because fear tells you that you're not ready. How often you let the opinions of others hold more weight than your own inner voice. The weak version is not an accident. It is the result of years of feeding these patterns, and if it was built, it can be unbuilt. You are not chained to it by nature, only by habit. Once you accept that it was created, you also accept that you have the power to create something stronger in its place. Confronting the weak version of yourself is not a comfortable process, and that is exactly why it is so often avoided. Most people would rather live with the quiet limitations of their weakness than face the raw truth of it head on. Confrontation means looking at the ways you have betrayed your own potential. It means acknowledging every time you chose the easy road, every time you avoided responsibility, every time you let fear or laziness dictate your path. This is not about judgment from others. This is about your own accountability to yourself. Avoidance feels easier in the short term. It allows you to keep pretending that everything is fine, that you are doing well enough, that you are not capable of more. But avoidance is also the perfect breeding ground for weakness to grow unchecked. Every time you refuse to confront it, you silently agree to let it lead you. And make no mistake, the weak version wants to lead. It thrives in secrecy and denial. It works best when you are too distracted, too busy, or too numb to notice that it is the one making the decisions. To confront it, you must be willing to strip away the masks. This means sitting with yourself in complete honesty, without blaming the world, without pointing at circumstances, and without softening the truth to protect your ego. You have to ask difficult questions and answer them without filters. Why do you avoid discomfort? Why do you hesitate when opportunity appears? Why do you let your mood determine your level of effort? These questions are not comfortable to ask, but they are the only way to uncover the patterns you have been avoiding. The weak version will try to defend itself during this process. It will present excuses dressed as reasons. It will remind you of past pain to justify present inaction. It will tell you that you are protecting yourself, that you are being wise, that you are simply picking your battles. And sometimes, it will even mix truth into its lies to make them more believable. This is why you must be vigilant. You are not confronting an enemy who fights openly. You are confronting one that hides in the shadows and wears your own face. Direct confrontation also means catching it in the act, not just reflecting on it later. You must become alert enough to notice when it tries to take control in real time. The moment you feel yourself pulling back from a challenge, the instant you sense the urge to procrastinate, the second you catch yourself choosing comfort over discipline. That is the moment to face it. Interrupt the pattern. Speak to it in your mind if you must, making it clear that you see it and will not obey it. These small acts of awareness weaken its hold on you over time. There will be resistance. Confrontation is not a single event, it is a repeated act of courage. Some days you will feel strong and decisive, ready to challenge yourself. Other days you will feel tired, tempted to let it slide, tempted to let the weak version take the wheel again. But every confrontation, no matter how small, is a victory. It chips away at the control the weak version has over you and reminds you that you are not powerless. Ultimately, confrontation is an act of reclaiming authority over your own life. It is declaring that you will no longer allow a smaller, weaker self to dictate your choices. It is a refusal to keep living in a way that protects your comfort at the expense of your growth. And while it may feel like a battle at first, over time it becomes a way of living, a habit of meeting yourself honestly, without flinching, without excuses, without surrender. Replacing weakness with disciplined action is not a single decision, but a continuous practice. It is the deliberate choice, made again and again, to move in the direction that challenges you rather than the one that soothes you. Discipline is not about punishment, it is about alignment. Aligning what you do with who you want to become, even when you do not feel like doing it. The weak version thrives on impulses, moods, and fleeting feelings, but discipline is built on commitment, which does not depend on how you feel in the moment. The first step in replacing weakness with discipline is to understand that feelings are unreliable guides. If you wait until you feel ready, motivated, or inspired, you will remain trapped in inconsistency. Discipline means acting regardless of emotional resistance. It means showing up to train when you are tired, starting the work when you would rather rest, and speaking the truth when silence would be more comfortable. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you take power away from the weak version and give it to the stronger self that is trying to emerge. Consistency is the foundation here. Weakness is not removed by occasional bursts of effort. It is replaced by steady, repeated action over time. Each small disciplined act, waking up at the time you promised yourself, keeping the commitments you made, resisting the urge to take shortcuts, becomes a brick in the structure of your stronger self. Over time, these bricks form walls that protect you from falling back into the habits of the weaker version. To replace weakness, you must also redefine your relationship with discomfort. The weak version treats discomfort as a warning to stop, but the disciplined self sees it as a sign of growth. When you train your mind to move toward discomfort, instead of away from it, you remove one of the main weapons the weak version uses against you. This shift requires awareness, because discomfort will never feel pleasant, but over time, you begin to associate it with progress instead of danger. Another key aspect of replacing weakness is setting clear, non-negotiable standards for yourself. The weak version operates in vague terms. I'll try. I'll see how I feel. Maybe tomorrow. Discipline removes vagueness by creating exact rules and sticking to them. You decide what time you will wake up, how many hours you will dedicate to your craft, what physical standards you will maintain, and then you do it without exception. Each time you honor these commitments, you strengthen the identity of the disciplined self and weaken the identity of the weak one. This process also involves catching yourself in moments of compromise. The weak version thrives in subtle negotiations, telling yourself that skipping one day won't matter, that cutting corners just this once is harmless. Discipline recognizes these thoughts as traps. It refuses to engage with them and instead takes immediate action before the mind can talk itself out of it. This is how disciplined action becomes automatic, by removing the window for negotiation. Replacing weakness with discipline is not glamorous. It is repetitive, demanding, and often unnoticed by others. But that is its power. While the weak version seeks recognition and praise, the disciplined self is content with quiet victories, knowing that each one builds strength that cannot be taken away. Day by day, disciplined action reshapes your identity until the behaviors that once felt impossible become your new baseline. Strength is not built in comfort, it is forged in discomfort and challenge. Every time you step into situations that test you, you create an opportunity for growth that the weak version of yourself cannot survive. The weak version thrives only when life is predictable, when everything is easy, when you remain within the boundaries of what is familiar. To strengthen yourself, you must deliberately step beyond those boundaries, even when it feels unnatural or intimidating. Discomfort is the training ground for resilience. It forces you to face parts of yourself that you would otherwise avoid. When you lift heavier weights than you thought you could, when you push through the last repetition, despite the burn, when you speak up in a room that intimidates you, you are sending a signal to yourself: I can endure more than I believed. These moments, repeated over time, rewire your identity. You begin to see yourself not as someone who avoids difficulty, but as someone who confronts it directly. Challenge also exposes truth. In moments of struggle, you see your real limits, not the imagined ones created by fear. You discover how much of your hesitation has been mental rather than physical. You learn that pain is often temporary, that fear is often exaggerated, and that obstacles are rarely as insurmountable as they first appear. This knowledge makes you stronger because it removes the illusions that the weak version depends on to keep you small. To use discomfort as a tool, you must approach it with intention. Random hardship does not automatically make you stronger. You have to meet it with awareness and effort. When you choose the harder path, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, starting a conversation you'd rather avoid, committing to a task that stretches your skills, you are training your mind and body to operate under strain. This training becomes your armor, protecting you from being easily broken by life's inevitable challenges. The weak version of you will resist this process fiercely. It will try to convince you that comfort is a reward and that challenge is unnecessary suffering. It will point to others who take the easy road and seem happy, using them as proof that you don't need to push yourself. But you must remember that happiness built on avoidance is fragile. It collapses the moment reality demands more of you than you have trained for. Strength built through challenge, on the other hand, is lasting. It does not depend on circumstances being favorable, because it has been shaped in conditions that were difficult. It knows how to adapt, how to persevere, how to keep moving when others quit. And this is not limited to physical strength, it extends to emotional and mental resilience as well. Every time you endure discomfort without giving up, you teach your mind that it can remain calm and capable under pressure. The key is consistency. Facing one challenge will not transform you. Facing them regularly will. Over time, what once seemed overwhelming will become normal, and you will seek out greater challenges because the smaller ones no longer test you. This is how strength grows, not in sudden leaps, but in steady increments that, over time, create a version of yourself that the weaker one can no longer compete with. When you make discomfort a part of your daily life and welcome challenges, instead of fearing them. You build a foundation that is unshakable. The weak version will find no place to hide because it cannot exist in the same space as the disciplined, resilient, and tested self that emerges from such a life. The stronger version of yourself is not something you meet once and then keep forever. It is something you choose every single day. Strength is not a permanent state. It is maintained through decisions, through habits, and through a constant refusal to slip back into patterns that once defined the weaker you. The danger is thinking that because you have had moments of discipline or bursts of courage, the transformation is complete. The weak version is patient. It waits for you to relax, to get comfortable, to believe the work is done. That is when it tries to return. Choosing the strong version daily begins the moment you wake up. Every choice you make is a vote for one identity or the other. Do you get up when you said you would? Or do you stay in bed for a few more minutes because it feels good? Do you follow through on your plan for the day? Or do you let distractions and mood dictate your actions? These are not small choices. They are the daily battles where one version of you grows stronger and the other weaker. It requires awareness to recognize these moments in real time. You must learn to pause before acting, to notice when you are leaning toward the path of least resistance. That pause is your chance to decide who you will be in that moment. The weak version thrives on automatic reactions, saying yes to temptation without thought, saying no to challenge without reflection. The strong version is built in that space between impulse and action, where you deliberately choose the harder, better path. There will be days when you do not feel like choosing the strong version. Fatigue, stress, doubt, they will all try to pull you back into old ways. This is where discipline must override emotion. The strong version is not chosen because it feels good in the moment. It is chosen because it aligns with who you want to be. When you act in alignment despite resistance, you reinforce the identity you are building. The more often you do this, the less power the weak version has over you. Accountability plays a crucial role in this process. The weak version loves secrecy. It thrives when your promises exist only in your head. The strong version is strengthened when you create visible, measurable commitments. Writing down your goals, tracking your progress, making your actions transparent to yourself and others. When your standards are clear and your progress is visible, it becomes harder to hide from your own truth. It is also important to understand that choosing the strong version daily does not mean perfection. You will have moments when you slip, when the weak version wins a battle. What matters is that you do not let it win two in a row. The strong version is not about never failing. It is about recovering quickly, about refusing to let setbacks become habits again. This ability to reset is part of what keeps the weak version from regaining control. Over time, these daily choices reshape you. The strong version stops being something you must fight for with every breath and starts becoming your default state. You find yourself doing the hard things without overthinking, keeping promises to yourself automatically, and seeking growth without hesitation. But this is only possible if you continue to make the choice every day to live in alignment with the stronger self and refuse to hand the wheel back to the weaker one. The weak version of yourself is not an enemy you defeat once. It is a shadow that will always try to return when you stop paying attention. Every moment of your life is a decision between feeding that shadow or strengthening the self that is capable, disciplined, and unshakable. You have seen where the weak version comes from: fear, comfort, and outside influence, and you know it survives through avoidance, excuses, and surrender. You have also seen that it can be replaced through daily discipline, through facing discomfort, and through making the harder choice again and again until it becomes who you are. The strong version is forged in challenge, maintained through action, and chosen in every situation where your mind offers you two paths. The choice will always be yours. but so will the consequences of that choice.